A pack of 15 Ukrainian drones charged across the Gulf of Finland toward Luga, Russia's biggest Baltic port, a target the defenders had long called untouchable. They had flown 960 kilometers through the night, engines hot, fuel gauges creeping toward empty. Everything felt routine until morning fog birthed a Russian patrol. The formation leader snapped hard right as tracers stitched the dawn. The patrol boat had seen them. Its 14.5 millimeters machine gun walked fire across the flight path. Rounds threaded the gap between two drones close enough that a human pilot would have felt the pressure waves. These had no pilots, only operators watching grainy satellite feeds from bunkers near Kiev. 3 missiles spat from the patrol boat. Iglis rounds meant for helicopters, now desperately fired at ghosts in the fog. The swarm scattered like startled starlings. Some climbed, others dove to wave height. One missile lost lock and spiraled into the Baltic. Another detonated harmlessly between targets when its proximity fuse found only empty air. The third struck, turning a trailing beaver into a brief fireball that fountained across the water. 14 survivors regrouped and pressed on toward Luga, 40 kilometers away. That's when the S-400 battery lit them up. Its gravestone radar had been watching for minutes, then flipped from search to target. These were not hobby birds. They were UJ-26 beavers, purpose-built weapons that could give Russia's expensive SAM grid nightmares. The radar operator was about to find out why a trillion-ruble air defense network feared $35,000 drones. When the beavers entered range, the S-400 painted them with a focused radar beam at roughly 3 gigahertz, measuring tiny reflections. Fiberglass and carbon fiber airframes reflect only a fraction of the radar energy metal aircraft do. At 40 kilometers, they showed up smaller than seagulls. The operator couldn't get a clean lock, so he improvised, track with missile seekers first, using the missile's own sensors to feed better targeting data back. 2 48N6DM missiles erupted from their canisters, each a roughly $2 million interceptor meant to vaporize $100 million fighters. Physics, however, favored Ukraine. The drones dove to 10 meters above the waves. The missiles tried to follow on a 70 degrees dive, but their control fins needed airflow to steer. At that angle, the fins stalled, and both interceptors tumbled into the sea. The S-400 crew switched to 9M96 E2 missiles, fitted with gas dynamic thrusters, tiny lateral rockets that allow 90-degree turns without airspeed. These missiles could pull 60 G and chase targets to wave height. The lead beaver banked hard left. The missile calculated an intercept and adjusted. 3 seconds to impact. 2 seconds. The warhead detonated, spraying 200 tungsten fragments. One drone disintegrated into carbon fiber confetti. A second missile scored, but the debris created a new problem. 13 radar returns became hundreds as wreckage scattered and masked the survivors. The remaining 13 drones split like skittish rabbits, some climbing, some diving, some veering left, others right. Russian air defenders had seen these tactics before. They'd already arrayed for Panzer systems in overlapping fields, creating a lethal box. No matter which way the drones fled, they entered someone's engagement zone. The Panthers were built for this: missiles for reach, cannons for close-in work, the goalkeeper when everything else fails. Unlike the S-400's mass salvo approach, each Panzer used a shoot-look-shoot philosophy. Fire one interceptor, assess, then fire again, maximizing kills against maneuvering small targets. The 1st Panzer locked a formation leader and spat a 57 times 10 to the power of 6 missile. The drones executed a wagon wheel maneuver, spiraling around a moving center while still advancing. The constantly shifting aspect angle fooled proportional navigation, which assumed steadier motion. The Panzer gunner switched to twin 30mm barrels, able to put 5,000 rounds per minute into the air. Instead of tracking single targets, he created a beaten zone, a cube of air filled with lead. For drones passed through, 2 came out the other side. The math was brutal and simple. 9 drones remained, almost a dozen Russian interceptors, and hundreds of cannon rounds expended. And they still hadn't reached the port. Across Leningrad Oblast, warning lights flared. Battles mirrored this one at Kursk, Bryansk, and Rostov. 14 other drone swarms pressing attacks across western Russia. Every air defense battery was busy. Reinforcements were impossible. These defenders were on their own. So were the attackers. The survivors pushed forward. The Kasuka-4 electronic warfare vehicle, a shipping container on wheels, switched on, emitting $20 million worth of jamming gear. As the 9 Beavers neared Luga, the system saturated the electromagnetic spectrum. The Kasuka sweeps from 1.2 to 5.8 gigahertz, searching for control links back to operators 1,000 kilometers away. Russian EW crews used sweep and dwell, rapidly scanned to find active signals, then focused jamming power on them. Within seconds, they picked up transmissions at 2.4 gigahertz and focused a 20W beam, erecting a wall of noise. But the Beavers weren't simple RC toys. They frequency hopped, leaping between 128 channels per second in a pseudo-random sequence, like constantly changing phone numbers mid-conversation, with only one party knowing the code. In theory, this should be unjammable. In response, Russians resorted to barrage jamming. Flood the entire band when you cannot isolate the needle in the haystack. That, too, should have severed control links. The drones kept flying. They'd switch to autonomous navigation using terrain countermatching. Radar altimeter pings compared to preloaded topographic maps. Every hill, bridge, and clump of trees had been mapped. The drones knew where they were without external signals. Autonomy had a cost. 3 drones struck a new construction crane that hadn't existed when their maps were compiled 6 months earlier. The metal tower rose from the fog, too late to avoid. Carbon fiber met steel, instant destruction. 6 survivors continued, batteries at 18%. Calculations turned critical. Enough energy to reach the objective, none to spare for evasive pilotless aerobatics. 1 shot remained. The S-400 battery commander faced a brutal calculus. His remaining missiles cost roughly $2 million apiece and were designed to kill aircraft worth 100 times more. The attacking drones were $35,000 each. Even if he obliterated every last one, he'd likely be bankrupting his defense grid. This wasn't just combat, it was economics with explosives. He ordered a switch to Zu-23 twin 23mm anti-aircraft guns from the 1960s. Cheap rounds, roughly $3 per pound, and still lethal. But they required optical targeting. Somebody had to actually see a target to shoot it. The drone skimmed at 150 kilometers per hour, pitching random barrel rolls every 2 to 4 seconds. The targeting computer needed 3 seconds of steady track to produce a firing solution. It never got it. Gunners fell back on analog chaos. Tracers stitched across the sky, hoping something connected. One burst hit a drone mid-roll, tearing fiberglass and sending it down. 5 remained. Luga lay 8 kilometers ahead. Real war has other enemies besides ordnance. As the drones closed, warming air lifted the low-deck fog that had earlier concealed them. The fog returned viciously, turning the battlefield into a ghost maze where million-dollar sensors went blind. Visibility collapsed to 30 meters. Russians couldn't see the drones. The drones couldn't see the port. All were flying and fighting blind. A Panzer's thermal imager, normally able to spot aircraft at 5 kilometers, had range cut to 200 meters by fog-scattering infrared like visible light. Defenders resorted to area saturation. Fire blind at likely approaches, create invisible walls of lead at GPS coordinates, and hope the drones cross them. 5 Ukrainian drones hugged 3 meters above the Baltic, radar altimeters pinging to stay above the waves. Salt spray smeared their lenses, turning any camera feed into gray mush. Operators in Ukraine saw only static over low-band satellite links. They flew on coordinates and math alone, trusting predictions to carry them through murk toward Luga's gas complex. Frustrated, Russian forces switched on GPS spoofers, transmit stronger fake satellite signals to fool receivers. Imagine your car directing you through another city. 2 drones following spoofed breadcrumbs banked hard and plunged into the water. The splashes left only fleeting radar returns in the fog. 3 remained, inertial navigation, and onboard sensors, keeping them true despite the falsified sky. Port security toppled to last-ditch measures. IGLA shoulder-fired missiles clustered on rooftops and towers. The Igla Seeker uses a nitrogen-cooled detector sensitive at 3 to 5 microns, deeper into infrared than human sight. It can spot half-degree temperature differences, but a Beaver's 20-horse engine ran only about 40 degrees above ambient. Against the warm Baltic fog, it was nearly invisible. Troops lay ambush patterns. Fire only when they heard the whine of motors and aim from behind where exhaust heat peaked. One missile found its mark. Its proximity fuse detonated 5 meters from a drone, and shrapnel shredded control cables and composite skin. The drone spun into a storage tank farm. 2 pushed on, weaving between 40-meter petroleum tanks. And me, 8 thundered overhead. Door gunners poured PKM fire at shadows. The pilot tried to use rotor downwash to blow drones into obstacles. 60-kilometer gusts could slam them into walls. But downdraft also carved temporary windows in the fog. Brief moments when cameras cleared and operators could glimpse the target. The massive cryogenic processing complex ahead. Its safety systems detected an uncommanded aircraft. Threat assessment rules designed to stop accidental strikes flipped emergency protocols. Sirens screamed. Emergency venting dumped thousands of cubic meters of methane and ethane to avert catastrophic overpressure if tanks ruptured. An invisible, flammable cloud spread across the facility. A perfect fuel-air mixture waiting for any spark. Water cannon trucks sprinted to intercept points, their operators trying to knock drones from the sky with high-pressure streams. These weren't garden-variety sprayers, but industrial jets that could punch through thin structures at 50 meters. One drone plunged into a column of water. The pressure snapped a propeller like a twig. It tumbled onto concrete, warhead intact but rendered harmless. The final Beaver adjusted course. Its thermal camera locked onto the cryogenic processor's unmistakable signature, minus 163 degrees Celsius, colder than anything around. The operator accepted manual control over an iridium link with a 2-second delay, precision nearly impossible at that lag. 12% battery remained, perhaps 90 seconds of flight. The drone threaded a weaving route through a maze of pipes and towers, each turn burning precious energy. Security teams fired rifles and shotguns at the sound of its motor, bullets sparking off pipework. A pellet cluster shattered the camera, leaving the operator to fly from last known position and dead reckoning. 10 seconds to impact. 5. Battery critical. Motors fading. Momentum would do the rest. The Beaver struck the fractionation columns, base exactly where the operator had aimed, crumpling steel with a metallic crunch. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then thermite ignited, a white-hot flare that burned through the column's wall in 2 seconds. Superheated metal sprayed into pressurized vessels, instantly vaporizing hydrocarbon liquids. A pressure spike ruptured adjacent piping. Vented clouds ignited. A fuel-air explosion expanded supersonically. A crushing overpressure wave shattering windows within a kilometer. The fireball climbed 200 meters, brilliant orange against the morning fog. But the devastation did not stop there. The facility suffered bleave, boiling liquid expanding vapor explosions. Pressurized liquid flashing to vapor expand some 600 times, producing devastating blast. Ruptured vessels cascaded. Each failure caused the next to break. In minutes, the entire complex was consumed. The $2 billion cryogenic processor, engineered to survive quakes and storms, collapsed into twisted metal. The inferno burned for 6 days and was visible to satellites from the Estonian border, a column of smoke marking Ukraine's deepest strike yet.